The Paid to Play Podcast. CJ Miotti, Rhykker Freelancing. By PC Pod or Pad, you're listening to Paid to Play. I am Rob Farker, your host for this weekly exploration of the dangerous idea that bringing your whole self, especially the bits that you worry make you seem silly, geeky or odd, into your income-generating life is the best thing you can do. It might not be easy, but it's easier than we think and even fear, and I want to show you how. In every odd-numbered episode of this weekly show, I chat with a career crazy, an income iconoclast, someone who has taken the things he or she loves to do, recognise that other people value the skills or products of that play, and then stood by that value and asked for, and received, financial reward. Now, when I first discovered my guest today online, my thought was, I want to be this guy when I grow up. CJ Miotti is better known to people on YouTube as Rhykker. He is the president, CEO, and sole creative talent of an outfit that he calls Rhykker Freelancing. It covers all of his bases: writer, voice talent, graphic artist. One of his main gigs right at the moment is the senior editor, or one of the senior editors, of a website called The Escapist. If you folks remember my chat with Gavin Dunn, aka The Miracle of Sound, all the way back in episode 5, that's a name you'll probably be familiar with. The Escapist is a large gaming-oriented multimedia website which has been in business for years, and CJ writes and produces video content both as an article writer and as a game reviewer. Another name that gamers particularly might recognise is Steve Jackson Games. He has written articles for the Pyramid magazine. As I mentioned, he has a YouTube channel, again under the name Rhykker, R-H-Y-K-K-E-R, under which he helps gamers play better, whether it be online or around the tabletop. And on top of that, as mentioned before, he is a graphic designer. He has produced logos, maps, and even, I discovered while hunting around his public Dropbox files, the odd webcomic. And as you're about to hear, the man has a fantastic voice for voice work. It is my pleasure to have him on the show. CJ, thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thanks so much, Rob, for having me on. I don't know that I can quite live up to the hype here, but I'll do my best.
Look, having seen your work, it's not. I keep thinking it's not much trouble at all. Speaking of your online work now, I did a little bit of investigating beforehand of your various presences, and look, I have to say, I had a bit of a tough time nailing down what you're really into at the moment. I think I've narrowed it down to 3 possibilities: Diablo 3, and I might be stretching it a bit here, Diablo 3. Would that be...
You're close to the ballpark, yeah. Yeah. Diablo 3 is what I mainly produce for video content, as well as, so I'm a senior editor for The Escapist. A lot of the work I do for them is editing and contracting work, but I do have a column that I will, when I have time to, which it's difficult to find time. If there's one thing, and I think this is something that a lot of freelancers or entrepreneurs could really say, is if there's one thing that you can wish for more of, it will be more time, more hours in the week. But when I get a chance, I'll write a column for The Escapist called "This Is How We Do It," and it's mostly been Diablo guides, sort of written versions of my video guides, because I understand a lot of people prefer reading to watching a video. To be honest, I at least used to be one of those guys. You know, I like to be able to pour through the writing. So, sorry, I'm wrestling a cat right now on my lap. But
oh, look, I'm lucky. I've got 2 dogs, and right at the moment they've decided to, by some miracle and probably a little bit of wrangling from my wife, not bother me while we're doing this chat. So sometimes I'll just repeatedly nudge on the office door until I give up and let them in. So don't worry, I know exactly how you feel there. I think that cat's sort of been a guest star of a couple of videos from memory.
Yes, she has.
So how Was there a particular moment when you sort of looked at yourself and your life and you realised, holy crap, I am a fan of video games, this is what I love?
I mean, I've loved video games for as far back as I can remember. I started off on consoles, I guess, with the Super Nintendo playing Mortal Kombat. I mean, I guess I wasn't excessively into gaming, but then at around age 8, my dad introduced me to PC gaming, and that's what opened the door. That's what started me down this dark path towards being I consider myself a PC gamer, and yeah, you know, being able to find a way, I guess, to monetize my love and my passion for certain games, and I guess gaming in general, has been a great way for me to reconcile spending time, you know, playing games. Like, well, am I working or is this recreation, you know?
A position that many people around the world, I'm sure, would envy you for. I'd tell you what, if we're just still talking about gaming in general, I mean, aside from your current darling Diablo III, what are some of your old favourites, whether recently or back when you were still a youngster or any time in between?
Well, I know when I was young, Blizzard Entertainment made a big impact on my life, and sort of a pipe dream passion, or yeah, I guess a pipe dream of mine was to one day work for Blizzard as a creative writer. I would pour through the lore manuals of StarCraft and Warcraft 2. I would see the artwork, and there was one guy in particular, Chris Metzen, and I was like, that's the guy I want to be when I grow up. And so, oddly enough, my path ended up taking me scholastically into science, but you know, the creative outlets were always a big part of my life, and I knew they always would be. I just was hesitant to pursue a career in something that has, I guess, less stability. Yeah, but I guess here we are.
Yeah. Do you remember when was there a particular moment when you first decided to make that leap? Was it a case of a first small step, a gig, or just a piece of a creative item, for want of a better word, that you put together just to see whether you could do it?
Well, what happened was it was 2009, I believe, I graduated from university with my degree in science, which is very different from what I'm doing now, obviously. And science was sort of my fallback plan, which is kind of a bizarre fallback plan for most people, but getting the degree was a rite of passage. I definitely do not regret it, and it has, in fact, helped sort of land me where I am right now, in that my position with the Escapist is senior editor for movies and TV and science and technology. When I was first brought on for the Escapist, it was for basically my background in science. So oddly enough, things kind of came full circle. But yeah, once I got my degree, I knew, yeah, okay, I could get a job in science and be pretty not very content with my job and just live for the weekends. But I wanted to have a go at trying to, initially the plan was to become a writer. And so I spent a year in just personal studies and research, and trying to break into fiction writing. And, it's difficult to break in. It's difficult to get your foot in the door there. But ultimately I ended up just starting to look for whatever jobs I could find in writing. I ended up finding, I think it was a Craigslist posting of all things, for game walkthrough writing. I applied for that, didn't hear anything, so I thought, nothing of it, until a couple months later I got contacted. I found out that the outlet contacted me was Gamefront.com, which formerly existed as Filefront.com, which had been around.
Yes, I have fond memories of downloading Dawn of War, Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War patches from Filefront.
There you go. And one of my big games back in '99, apart from StarCraft, Diablo II, apart from the Blizzard games, Unreal Tournament was my other huge game. And I really became a gamer, by which I mean I really tried to become good at video games from Unreal Tournament. And Filefront had all the mods. This is the connection, that it was a huge modding scene, and Filefront is where I would download all the mods. So it was exciting for me to oh man, this is Filefront. And So I started doing walkthroughs for them, and from there I kind of showed them what else I can do. And that's really what got my foot in the door and started this whole avalanche that has taken me to where I am right now.
So, I understand that since, in the meantime, Filefront, which later expanded out into Gamefront, did wind up closing down its doors for at least the content creation side of things. Were you sort of caught in that at all, or?
Right. So what happened was, when was it? It was in late 2013, or I think it was late 2013. Basically, the company that owned Gamefront merged with the company that owned The Escapist. And at that point, some of us from Gamefront were moved over to The Escapist, and I was one of those. And generally when there is, I guess, an acquisition or a merger, both websites were coming under one roof, and so the editor-in-chief at Gamefront was let go because he couldn't have two heads. Is my understanding of what happened. So there might have been one or a couple layoffs, just sort of, I guess, avoiding redundancy is how corporate might put it. I don't know. I've never been a corporate man. But the site did keep running with a smaller crew, and they kind of, I think, were shifting the focus of bringing the writers more to The Escapist. And ultimately, it was a few months ago, that transition sort of finalized, and that they brought over a few more of the people from Gamefront to The Escapist, and now Gamefront is back to being more of a file hosting service, and the whatever sort of game walkthroughs and that kind of stuff that Gamefront.com provided has been brought over to The Escapist.
It does seem like, in a way, with that sort of merger, a natural kind of progression, because the Escapist is more about the content creation in terms of editorial content. I mean, of course, Filefront is also about content creation, but it's more content creation within the confines of a game, and as you say, the mod scene. So, I mean, you came on board with The Escapist, so just to paint a little bit of a picture of that time with Gamefront and then proceeding over to The Escapist, was it a similar kind of job, and what was the job itself like? Were you working out of an office or out of home or some combination of the two?
I have, ever since graduating, I have only worked from home. So I've always been freelance. It used to be sort of being paid by paid for the content being produced, so paid by the article. Once I shifted into more of a position at The Escapist, where sort of there's a lot more of editing work, it's more difficult to, I guess, quantify that and be paid per unit. So it's now a flat rate a month. But I guess the shift was, for Gamefront, I was more producing the content and the articles. With The Escapist now, it's more overseeing, and again, when I'm able to, producing, content, as well.
As a freelancer, how much of your work is occupied right at the moment by The Escapist? How many other irons do you have in your freelance fire, as it were?
Well, I guess the entirety of the jobs that I have right now is, The Escapist is a big part of it. My YouTube is another part. I also, help manage a company that's sort of neither here nor there. And then lastly, I do graphic design, contracts, which, tends to be through this one company. This is something that I basically picked up in December. So those are my different venues, and size-wise, though, The Escapist and YouTube share the brunt of my workload.
And with YouTube, it's not like, in a way, you're necessarily working for YouTube. I've been slowly dabbling with it myself, and I haven't really got into all the options, but from what I gather of being a YouTuber, as people refer to, online video producers on that site, it is almost like you're you're creating the content for yourself and putting it up and inviting opportunities through YouTube to monetize it. Is, again, this is a very rough understanding, but what does it mean to be a YouTuber, a money-making YouTuber?
Yeah, that's the main way. It's through monetization through running ads, and you either do that yourself. Basically, once you the rules for becoming a YouTuber have changed over the years. It used to be years ago that you were restricted to 10-minute videos, and then your account, once you would pass certain check marks, then you were allowed to upload videos longer than 10 minutes, and then at some point you were allowed to run ads on your videos. I'm not sure if I think the process is easier today than it was back when I got started.
Yes. Speaking for myself, I was actually quite surprised a little while ago, thinking that I was still limited at 15-minute window, and I started looking into it a bit more when I decided to try and expand pay-to-play into a weekly thing rather than just a fortnightly. All you need to do now is verify your account with YouTube, and you have, I don't know if there is an upper limit on the length of individual videos that you can upload, but certainly you can do so and opt to not run ads. That's currently what I'm doing with my channel. So it seems to have broadened out amazingly. There must be they must be getting a lot of revenue from the paying channels that they can pretty much subsidize anybody else who wants to put up a video.
Yeah, I suppose, and with YouTube Gaming that just launched, I believe it was Wednesday. I don't know when this is running, but it launched recently, and basically Twitch TV is the streaming YouTube, for gamers especially. And YouTube has been wanting to get a piece of that pie. I don't know how successful that'll be, but they're definitely throwing money at it, and they have money to throw around. And they I don't know the exact division of how much of a cut YouTube gets from the ad revenue, but it's definitely sizable, is my understanding. So for all those the PewDiePies making millions a year, YouTube is very happy that he's making millions a year because they're profiting as well.
Yeah, no, there's a phenomenal success story right there. I've seen a couple of his videos, especially the Alien Isolation ones. I think I've already mentioned that in a previous chat, so I'll try and avoid harping on about that again. But yes, it almost seems like the secret to success on YouTube is just be as you as you can possibly be, and let your own personal flags fly, and people will sooner or later they'll find you and love what you do and subscribe to your channel. And if you're running ads as well, that seems to be the greatest formula for success so far.
Yeah, I divide YouTubers into two gross categories, with one being personalities and two being, I guess, content-focused creators. And so PewDiePie I describe as a personality. People follow him and subscribe to him because of him. They don't so much care what game he's playing or what he's doing. They just think he's hilarious or enjoy his personality and want to see him. And the other, the content focused is sort of what I do, in that I make, guides for games. So it's people want to know something, and they Google it and they come across my video. And so it's a lot more about search engine optimization and understanding what it is that people will be searching for and want to know. And of course, delivering a product that will satisfy them. And I find it's more difficult to get as big as PewDiePie that way. It's probably impossible to get as big as a personality, but I find it's probably easier to break in than being a personality, because just being a personality, where's the discovery? How do people find you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how do you kind of boil yourself down into a web-compatible description that somehow other people are going to, I want to find a guy who's funny and is crazy, and where the heck is PewDiePie from? I was tempted to toss out Swedish, but that's probably very horrible.
No, you're right.
He's from Sweden?
Yeah.
Oh,
That is.
There you go. I'm sure I saw that somewhere, but it's you don't know that you're looking for PewDiePie until you find him.
Exactly.
So yeah, but I will say I see what you mean about producing the videos to help people. I mean, I stumbled across you. I think I'd seen your name before on the Escapist because I'm an occasional browser and I do enjoy the site, but you really came to my attention when I went looking for advice on how to play Heroes of the Storm better. And there were your videos on the biggest mistake that people playing Heroes of the Storm make and how to avoid it. And then laning for XP. And it was like, that was the first time anybody had ever really explained this idea of laning to me and what it meant. So I do see that difference there where you actually, if you're writing instructions, you have to be making sure you're tagging them and optimizing the written aspects of the content so that search web crawlers can find them and turn them into results for people's searches. It's SEO almost seems like wizard's work in a way for an outsider. How much time do you have to spend on that?
I mean, I guess the more you become familiar with it, the more natural it becomes. But definitely, my experience working with Gamefront and I sort of feel everything has been leading to where I'm going and where things have been going. So I was able to leverage a lot of experience I gained in SEO from working at Gamefront and the Escapist. Gamefront was a WordPress-based website, so there's a lot of sort of standard SEO practices. And when you first hear about SEO, yeah, it can seem pretty complicated. But at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. You just kind of have to learn how it is that people search and how search engines will, I guess, read your site and read what people want and mesh those two things together. And I think that's why I was able to sort of break into the Diablo III video world, because it was sort of a niche where it seemed there wasn't really people established who kind of knew how to capitalize necessarily on SEO. And by no means am I an expert, but maybe I was doing a few things right that other people weren't, and that was making my videos rank better than others. Because I've had people say, anytime I try to search a Diablo 3 guide, I get one of your videos. So, it's a big part of it. And I think it's just something that some content creators don't understand. Like, they just don't recognize that it's something that they should do until, like once you hear about it, it's kind of obvious. But I'm sure some people just, don't realize it.
How much time nowadays does graphic design take in your schedule? I have had a look at your portfolio, and I did have a chuckle at Flame Wars. Was that, this is changing the subject midstream, but was that an idea that you were playing with, maybe putting a webcomic together at one point?
Oh dear. So, during university, I actually had a webcomic. It ran for 3 years, and it was not something I ever monetized, and I kind of, when I look back at the traffic it received, I maybe kind of regret not doing that. I could have maybe gone, I don't know how I would have monetized it, I think was the issue back then. But, so I had an interest in doing webcomics. Again, I've always needed creative outlets. And, what ended up happening was at some point, this is very ironic, but the Escapist was running a contest to start up a new webcomic. And this was before I was even working with Gamefront. And so I put together Flame Wars as just my submission for that contest. And I'm sure there were countless submissions, and the deserving winner won. And it's funny that I ended up working for the Escapist years later, and I don't think they know about that, and I don't know that I will bring it to their attention. I was a lot younger when I did that, and it was fun. I definitely enjoyed it. It would take hours to do webcomics. So back when I was doing webcomics on a weekly basis, I was updating once or twice a week, and it was a good 5 to 10 hours a week just doing the webcomic.
Yeah.
So it's work, and I wasn't getting paid for it. And again, if I had all the time in the world, there would be so many things that I would be doing.
And on another note, you do mention on your website that you market yourself as a voice talent as well. So, what is work? What are things like on that front at the moment for you? And what kind of gigs have you been doing?
Oh, very, very little to none, really. I host the Escapist podcast occasionally, is what happens. I used to host the Escapist Science and Technology podcast. We used to have a podcast for each of our channels. But we've now combined our efforts into one unified podcast, and so we'll rotate through people hosting them. So I will occasionally host the podcast there. But apart from that, I mean, most of my voice work is really just for my own YouTube videos. I did, some time ago, this was before my YouTube channel got big, when I was just, posting Dungeons and Dragons videos. That's how my YouTube channel got started. I just wanted to share my love of Dungeons and Dragons with people. So there was no monetization. It was just a passion project. And, like some fan or viewer, they contracted me to do the voice work for his Magic Act opening, or his CD or something. So that was interesting. But apart from that, I just it's not something that I've been. People tell me, hey, you should get into voice acting, and it's just something that I guess I don't quite know how quite to break into that field.
I know what you mean. I do get the odd person saying, you ought to be in radio and things like that. And I've got to admit, radio itself, having tried a bit of community radio at one point, doesn't really interest me. This is the closest I think I want to get to any kind of radio show, and I enjoy this enough as it is without actually having to rock into a studio and perhaps wind up doing in-between spots for music and ads and drive time and all that kind of stuff. But it's nice to actually be able, especially nowadays, to find your own level without necessarily, as soon as you have a talent, being restricted to all the ways that people suggest are the ways that you have to make the only ways that you can make a thing out of your talent, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, look, you did bring up D&D, and myself, I've kind of had a bit of a love-hate relationship with tabletop role-playing myself, but how do you cram in getting sessions in between everything else that you're doing?
At this point, I think it's been a solid year, or has it been 2 now, that I've not played D&D, which is kind of tragic because ever since I was, I think, 12, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons, and this is my first hiatus I've really taken. But I'm getting back into it now. It's actually my girlfriend is very supportive, and she recognized how that was a huge part of my life for so long, and has been encouraging me to get back into it. So that's what we're gonna start doing again. I used to be very, very structured and having a session every week at a designated start time. And we're just going to take it a little bit more relaxed this time is how we're going to do it. But I mean, my schedule was pretty packed. I guess when people say I don't have time for this, what they really mean to say is I refuse to make time for this.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's justified. There are some things that you shouldn't sacrifice. Like maybe you don't want to sacrifice that extra hour of sleep, or you don't want to sacrifice, certain things. So it's really about what time we're willing to sacrifice to make time for other things.
So have you been keeping up? I mean, of course you have. I've been seeing the videos pop up, but it seems an incredible thing. I've been sort of watching D&D a little bit from the sidelines, especially since 3rd edition came out in the late 90s, and then 4th came out, of course, and there was a lot of hue and cry about that. I remember seeing. And now, of course, we've got 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which, if you look at the front covers, I think they've pretty much given up branding by editions of the game. They just say it's done, it's D&D, it's what we're putting out right now. How have you found the brand new edition of D&D so far?
Regrettably, my hiatus happened just as 5th edition was releasing, and we had plans already to start a 5th edition campaign. I was in the beta, I'd read through the rules. I really liked the direction. 4th edition. Okay, so I'm not a hater of 4th edition. 4th edition was really good at what it tried to be, and that was its strength was focusing on the combat and giving a very robust and elaborate combat system. Unfortunately, that perhaps lost a bit of what made former editions a little more magical, a little more special. And so I did like the move back towards older editions, sort of maybe a simplification of the rules of combat, because 4th edition combat would take very, very long. Depending on the group, I mean, a single battle could take hours, which was ludicrous. Yeah, so I've personally found myself gearing more towards systems that are much more focused on the role play and sort of downplay complex mechanics in combat. So that's why I like that. I enjoyed 4th edition for the time I played. I enjoyed 3rd edition. 3rd edition it wasn't my first, but it was my first main D&D edition. I love that to death. I enjoyed 4th edition as well, and I played that up until 5th edition came out.
As a freelancer, how do you manage? I believe it's been said that 20% of your work is what actually generates 80% of your income. And you're, as you mentioned earlier on, lucky enough that you're actually getting to do what you love doing anyway for your job. I guess there are two questions in here. How do you manage the play aspects of your work such that you don't get carried away with them? And also, a lot of people tend to put getting paid to play on a pedestal, where they think once you've achieved it, it is all that's involved is just the joyous bits of it, the bits that will get you carried away, without realizing that there are still some administrative things and job-related things that you need to do. How do you stop yourself from getting carried away in the joy bits of it, and what is the actual overall life of a freelancer like?
Oh, well, that bit that you said about, what is it, that 20%, I don't quite remember the math, but I love that. I love that quote.
20% of what you do actually generates 80% of your income. Yeah. Yeah,
and to take it as a microcosm, I think my YouTube videos perfectly encapsulate that. First off, each of my videos is minimum 1 hour of work, generally much more than that. And I could have, some videos will take longer than others. Some videos require more research than others. Some videos require more editing and all that. But sometimes there'll be a video that ends up being very easy to produce, very quick to produce, and will get far, far, far more views than my other videos. And then the other videos that take hours upon hours of work get far fewer views, and obviously the views translate into money, the income, thanks to the ad revenue. So it's funny how sometimes just a little bit will bring in a lot more.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, one thing about being a freelancer that made me hesitant of going into the whole thing to begin with was the job security. And one thing I found, I guess, from observing what's been happening in the video game industry, is that job security is kind of overrated. I've seen people lose their jobs just from downsizing like that. People that think they have steady, secure jobs. So I guess, they might have pension plans, they might have benefits, and so definitely that's not something that a freelancer has. There's still more security than being a freelancer, but I found by splitting my streams of income, at least if one of them dries up, I still have others. So that gives me more security knowing that, well, I'm getting income in X number of ways. I can afford to lose this one, and then I'll redouble my efforts in the other venues and try to find something new as well.
Yeah. No, it is one common story, especially nowadays, that we're hearing in my investigations into freelancing and all that kind of thing. People keep saying over and over again, job security isn't. You think you're solid in a 9 to 5, and then either you can never tell when the company is going to turn around and say, you know what, we're changing our business model, or we've brought in a new innovation that streamlines the way we do things. We don't need you doing what you do anymore, and we'll do our best to reskill you, but it might mean that you actually have to move to a different city. And if you can't do that, then thank you very much. It's been lovely working with you. Here's your accumulated leave and if you're lucky, any entitlements that you're due. Don't let the door hit you on the arse on the way out. It's, it seems to be becoming one of the modern myths, doesn't it? Those two lovely words, job security.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it comes as more of a shock to people that I guess think they have security. Whereas a freelancer, you sort of know that it's all on you, and that you don't have that security. So you kind of, I guess, if you do lose, if something does dry up, it's a bit less of a shock because you've been mentally prepared for it, or at least you should be as a freelancer. You should be thinking about, how can I transition into something else? What can I do if this ends? Have a plan set in place, so that you're ready, once what's almost inevitable, might happen. Again, we live in a time now, people change careers many times throughout their lives. Sometimes it's from their own choosing, sometimes it's not. And, I've had the joy of being able to do a lot of things that I enjoy doing, and over the years I've been getting a little bit more money for those things.
Yeah.
So I like the way the direction things are heading, and even if today I were to lose all of my streams of revenue, I'd be bummed out, yeah, but I have plans for things that I could try to dive into thereafter, and I'd be excited to see what else life has in store for me, because it's been a hell of a ride so far.
Yeah, and let's face it, being a freelancer as diverse as yourself, you have some fantastic stuff on your resume. It'd be hard to imagine that someone out there on the grapevine wouldn't go, what, Miozzi's out of a job? Quick, find him something to do. We've got to get him on board. One thing I'm curious about, how much, as a freelancer yourself, I mean, you've mentioned that creating YouTube videos can take a lot of time and a lot of work, which doing the basic stuff that I do, I sort of look at it and think, I wish I had the time to put captions and links in videos and all that kind of thing, but with me, of course, it's perhaps not an issue of time, but more an issue of energy, and to a certain extent, I do have other things I need to be doing. How much are you able to, if you can at all, outsource any of the stuff that you need done?
That's a fair question, and I'm the kind of person that I don't outsource, and that would help. Unfortunately, I like to have things just so, and maybe in order for me to hit the next stage of growth, I'm gonna have to start doing that. It's difficult for me to sort of relinquish control on things that are very close to my heart. But I do know that multi-channel networks, for instance, on YouTube, I'm signed with one, and they offer as a service, a lot of multi-channel networks do this as well, to do your video thumbnails for you, to do other certain things for you. So I could theoretically, go do these things, and for people that, say don't have graphic design skills, they would very much benefit from, getting these services done. But to me personally, because I do graphic design, I kind of see what they would be doing with my thumbnails, and I'm like, well, no, I kind of want it done my way. And so me wanting things done a certain way it results in me taking on more work, that could theoretically be outsourced. Yeah.
It's a tough one, just actually having to let go a little bit of the things that you're so used to having so much direct control over, even if there are benefits to doing so, eh?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's even if you arrive at a point where, let's say, you have a team, and I think at some point in the future, a logical growth stage would be for me to expand Rhykker Freelancing into more than just a one-man operation. And I've managed teams in other recreational capacities. So being a big gamer, at some point I was in a clan, and there was a certain degree of work and administrative management involved there. And initially I was very, very hands-on, and I guess I almost felt bad giving my I hate to use the word subordinates, but jobs to do. But I ultimately realized that a part of being a leader is learning how to what's the word I'm looking for here? Delegate. Because you need to train the people that you have working under you, and you have to as well show that you trust them. I mean, if you hire these people, if you're getting them to do something for you, then you got to show that you trust them to do that job, and let go of that control a bit and let people learn and grow just the way you did.
Yeah. No, it can be definitely a tough lesson to learn at times. CJ, if there were 3 things that you, looking back, wish that perhaps somebody could have told you when you were starting out, that you think might be of help to someone who is kind of looking themselves at what they want to be doing next and trying to earn an income off of it, what would those 3 things be?
All right. Okay. 3 things. Let's see. The first thing would be, this was a bit of a stubborn, misconception of mine I had, when I was in school. And that was that I refused adamantly to believe the oft expressed saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so I was very diligent in my studies, and I was a very hard worker, and I believed that as long as I worked hard, that I would be successful, and really nothing else mattered, that hard work would trump all. And I haven't completely abandoned that philosophy. Hard work is still certainly important, but having connections, knowing people is also very important. And as an example that I'll use, my current ongoing graphic design work is thanks to a connection I made at Gamefront. My old editor-in-chief at Gamefront, one day just reached out to me. He's working in a completely different field now. He reached out to me, and because he saw what I was doing with respect to graphics for Gamefront, he knew that I'd be someone that could produce graphic content for this new venue he's working for. So, work hard and show people what you can do. That's a big part of it. People have to be able to recognize what you do, see that hard work, see that you're an asset. So, that's, not replacing the hard work, but it's in addition to it.
Yeah.
So I wish I'd learned that a lot sooner.
Yeah, that sentence does seem to be a divisive one. It's not what you know, it's who you know, and it sort of imply, you kind of get this negative reaction to it because you think, well, you're basically telling people there's no point in working hard and becoming talented, which, it basically says all the slack buggers who are just connected to other people to get all the perks. It's, instead of it being, it is both what you know and who you know.
That's it, yeah. And it's also, unfortunately, a product of the world we live in and just human nature. People are more inclined to hire people that they know because they feel that there's just some more trust there. Even if someone is mediocre, but they know you, versus someone who's a completely unknown entity. Yeah, maybe the resume is spectacular, but there's just that fear of the unknown, and people will gravitate towards safety. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of, how things work. So making the connections and being excellent is a good way of getting the jobs and then progressing within that job. Because, you can know a lot of people and you can get a job, but then if you don't have the knowledge or the skill to back it up, you can lose that job, or you're just not going to really progress in it.
So, anyway, a couple of the other 2 things, if I can press you on the subject.
Sure, yeah, okay. Let's see. I think I had one in mind before. It's escaped my mind, but another I would say is recognize what value you could bring to whatever it is you're trying to do, whether it's a company that you're working for or whether it's your own personal projects. Recognize what value you could bring, what could set you apart from other people, and really focus on that. You know, a lot of people that, let's say, want to get into streaming or get into making YouTube videos, like they'll see the PewDiePies out there and they'll see and they sort of get that pipe dream of following that success, and that's great, but there's a million people trying to do that. What's going to set you apart? Find that thing that sets you apart. Focus on that. Or, you know, let's say you're just, you know, you have a job, and you want to progress in that job. Well, find a way to make sure that your employer knows what more you can bring to the company. You know, when I started working at Gamefront, I was just writing walkthroughs. And I was like, hey, you know, I could write this game review too if you want. And then later on, hey, you know, I could make this graphic here. And that's what allowed me to open the door further and further to them bringing me on to take on, you know, bigger projects and ultimately basically a member of their staff. Mm. And I guess the third thing would be follow your passion, or I mean, that's a tough one, because maybe someone has a very bizarre or out there passion, but it definitely helps to do something that you enjoy. And, you know, for me personally, I would rather make a little bit less money doing something that I enjoy than more money doing something that I just can't wait to get home and start playing, you know, or start doing the things that I enjoy. So
yeah.
I'm not going to say that literally every part of every job that I do is something that I absolutely adore, but I also can't say that there's anything else I'd really rather be doing as a job. So I think if there's something that you're passionate about and you're willing to put in the work and it is at least something reasonable, like that you can monetize it, and you put in the time to do the research and make whatever connections you might need to make, I do think it's possible to find success. You know, at least make a living doing things that you're passionate about.
Hmm. Well, after having heard you on this episode of the show, where can folks go to find out more about you and sample a bit more of your work?
Well, the main venue, I guess, would be my YouTube channel. My username is Rhykker there. That's, as you said, RHYKKER. You can see my work occasionally on The Escapist. That's escapistmagazine.com. I guess if you just go to my website, Rhykker.com, that probably is a hub for my other content. But, I mean, the brunt of my work is my YouTube channel.
Well, CJ Miotti, it has been a pleasure having you on the podcast to talk with you about what you love doing and to have a bit of a geek out about various things as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much for having me, and might I say that you have a great radio voice.
All I have to do is start exploiting it a bit more. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you very, very much. It means a lot to me that you are downloading this episode and getting it between your ears, and I hope that the chat in this episode was of help to you. Now, there are a couple of things that I would like to ask you to do for me. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to it on iTunes or your preferred podcast aggregator. And while you're there, could you give it a rating and leave a review, please? Also, on social media, could you like, favourite and share it? The Paid to Play podcast has pages on Facebook and Google+. Please like the page or add it to your circles as appropriate. Like +1 and share the episodes. And also join the Facebook group Fans of the Paid to Play podcast. There is also a Paid to Play podcast channel on YouTube where I upload the episodes. Please like and share them, and I would love to see your comments there. If you are a Twitterer, I am there as well. You can follow me at ByRobF. That's Bravo Yankee Romeo Oscar Bravo Foxtrot. I tweet the episodes on there, so if you could please favourite and retweet as well. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I would love it if you could sign up to Patreon and back the Paid to Play podcast. You will find the Patreon page for this podcast at www.patreon.com. That's Papa Alpha Tango Romeo Echo Oscar November.com/paid to play, all one word. Patreon is a crowdfunding website where, instead of backing a specific project once, people back ongoing projects like podcasts on a per month or per episode basis. You'll find my milestones and goals for the Patreon campaign there, and it would be great if you could get behind this podcast on a financial basis, even if it's just for $1 an episode. It will help me make the podcast bigger and better. I will be able to put a little bit more time and cash into it, and that way it will be able to better help you get paid to play. Now, next week's episode is going to be an even episode, which means it's Money Where My Mouth Is, Musings and Mailbag. It's where I talk about my own progress toward getting paid to play, put a little bit of overthinking into some of the issues I've encountered, and the overall idea of taking what you love doing and asking people to pay you for the products and skills of doing what you love. And I also answer your questions and read out your feedback. So I would love any mailbag submissions you might have. You can get in touch with me via any of the aforementioned social media. You can either leave a comment on the page or send me a private message. You can also email me at podcast@robf.com.au. Please indicate that your comment or email or private message is a mailbag question, and that you're okay for me to read it out on the episode, and also whether you're okay with me giving your name or online ID as the person who submitted the feedback or question. And if you've got multiple online IDs, please let me know which one you would prefer me to use. I am not a psychologist or trained therapist or coach. I'm just a guy with a mic and a dream and a little bit of experience and perspective. But again, I would love to hear from you. So, until next time, this is Rob Farker asking you to stand by your play. You might be surprised how many folks appreciate it. I license the interview and monologue content of the Paid to Play podcast under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 3.0 unported license. That roughly means you can sample, remix and redistribute it as long as you tell people that the bits of it you use came from Rob Farker and don't charge anyone for your work. For the full legal text, go to creativecommons.org. The theme music is written, performed by, copyright and used with the kind permission of Miracle of Sound. All rights reserved. For more great music inspired by geek culture, check out miracleofsound.net. This podcast is hosted by Business Web Integrations. Get in touch with them at businesswebintegrations.com.au to discuss your web hosting and business needs.